comes, I will start. Okay, good. Excellent. Well, thanks again. And this is our June introduction to ModelRisk session, right? We're going to talk about what ModelRisk can do, and we, as in every month, I will have to work really hard to try to find a different application. So every month, this talk is going to be different. So in 2 months ago, I talked about a cost estimation model. Last month, we talked about an NPV model. Today, we're going to talk about a risk register model. So if you have ideas or you have applications that you want to see, feel free to reach out or let us see your comments in the chat, because every month this is going to be different, right? So people come, right? So we're going to use ModelRisk, and ModelRisk is Bose Software's product, right? Bose Software is a company based out of Belgium. They have more than 20 years in expertise in quantitative risk management. And they started as consultants and trainers, and they evolved as a developer of software. And their main software is ModelRisk, right? It has, right now, I think it's 20 years on the market. And then also they have something that's called Tamara, which is for Gantt charts, for scheduling, right? So it's Monte Carlo on top of scheduling. And also they have a software called Pelican, which is an enterprise risk management software. We have in our website and in our YouTube channel, we have demos of all of them in case you're interested, right? What is our relationship with Bose Software? Dan and Jameson, they are working for doing sales with them, and we are their commercial arm, right? So this is how Fairfield's the commercial arm. Couple of clients, and you see that we have retail, we have pharmaceutical, we have government, we have food, we have space agencies, construction, oil and gas, etc. So all of these people, they have licenses of ModelRisk. So just for you to know all the typical applications that you have for the software. Right? Now, what does ModelRisk do? ModelRisk, what it is, and I'm going to show it to you right away, right? ModelRisk is an add-in to Excel, right? And this add-in to Excel lets you add distributions to it. That means that you will have a static model in Excel, any static model, right? Then you can add, let's imagine that you have here some variables in the model. So what ModelRisk is going to do is going to transform, is going to evolve these static variables to probabilistic variables. And these probabilistic variables are going to be simulated, and this simulation is going to cause a result, and this result is going to be seen as a histogram, right? Typical Monte Carlo, right? So ModelRisk is an outstanding tool to do that, right? So it does risk quantification, aggregation, and simulation, right? Besides that, works in any type of Excel model. So if you have it in Excel, it could be a subject of a simulation, which is great. They have dozens of distributions, more than 130. That means that if you're a new user, you can download a trial of ModelRisk today and start using it, and you will have access to the 130 plus distributions. And maybe you will use 3 or 4. And normally this is what we do when we do our trainings. We teach people how to use 3 or 4 distributions, and then you can double down and go and do a little bit of more of a deep dive inside the distributions. And the users can easily include uncertainty and risk events, right? So normally you will have a framework, a risk framework, where you have this, right? The x-axis is going to be the cost or the time. We're going to see cost today, right? And then you have uncertainties here, uncertainties. And here you have the risk events, right? Like this, the risk events. Our focus today is going to be on this, on the risk events, right? And then you can blend all of this together, right? And generate a budget estimation model, an NPV model, and anything, a project scheduling model, anything that it occurs to you that you have, logistics, insurance, energy, all of that you can do with this framework. And then you can pick and choose where you're going to add each one of them, depending on your modeling. You can model scenarios, you can model correlations, and you have complete reporting capabilities. So all of that you can get in ModelRisk. Nice thing about ModelRisk is that you don't have all of these different flavors of it, like ModelRisk, simple ModelRisk, super model. Everything is, I would always call it superstar. So ModelRisk superstar, you have it all up front, right? Now, is it ModelRisk simulation only? So you can only do this, and I'm going to start with the model right away. No, you can have more things. You can have portfolio optimization. You can integrate with our integrated enterprise risk management tool. You have time series. You have a data and results viewer. You can modularize a model and create what we call simulation imported seeds, right? You have key drivers reporting and so on. So this is really an outstanding tool, right? So before we go to the address migration tips, let's go with the model, and then after the model, we're going back, right? So what is it that I have here? I have a risk register. So I'm going to focus here in one application, right? This risk register, it's a module that you can plug into a cost estimation model, to an NPV model, to a budget model, I don't know, to logistic model, right? If you have potential supply chain disruptions, etc., right? So this is a typical module that you will add 20 to any quantitative risk analysis model. Now, what do you have here? And I'm going to explain this in detail so you can see the capabilities of the software. You have, in this case, you have 10 risks like incomplete designs, contract terms, regulatory risks, issues, construction and permitting issues, etc. Then what you can do, you can set up if these are going to be single or multiple risks, right? If you have single risks like this, you're going to have the capability of entering the probability of a risk occurring. For example, you can set up here and say, I want, you see, a discrete distribution like a Bernoulli distribution. I say this is going to be a 0.8 distribution. So that means that I have 80% probability of this risk occurring, meaning that this is going to be 80, meaning the number one is going to be added with 80, and the number 0 is going to have 20% probability of occurring, right? So that's a single risk occurrence, right? That's why if you see this green section here, and if you focus only in the first 8, you see that they are going to have always zeros and ones, like this. Always zeros and ones, because it does it with a Bernoulli distribution. What happens if the risk is multiple? Like, for example, you have the ability for the particular risk that you're analyzing, right, that this could happen more than one time during the time horizon of the model, right? So, for example, in the discrete, you have the Poisson distribution. Let me show it here. The Poisson distribution, you can say you have a lambda parameter, and you say, well, this is going to have an average of one occurrence. That means that your one time here is there, that's the average, but it is the average. You can have up to 5 times here in the number of occurrences from 0, right? You have 0 up to 5 times, and you see that 0 and 1, they have practically the same probability that it's going to be more or less like 0.36 or 0.37, like that. So if you take a look now, I'm going to change the color there, and let's make it orange. You see that the first ones, they are 0 and 1, and the second ones are multiple, right? Like this. Now, this is the first portion of it, right? I'm replicating what the future will be for me if I have these risks like that. Now, what happens with the impact? So what I did is I did model the impact. I'm sorry, I pressed impact per event, right? So that means that, for example, here, the incomplete designs, you have an event that if it happens, it's going to be between 8,000 and 11,000. And this is a per distribution. You see here, you can enter this by hand if you like. So if I like, I can do it like this, equal those per, like this, minimum, most like a maximum. So you don't need always the graphical UI, right? You don't always need the graphical UI. And if you like, as this is a an Excel sheet, right? And everything is mapped, so I can copy and paste, and I will get all my distributions there, like that, right? Like this. So what this is saying is that I'm going to get a sample from between these boundaries, etc. Now, what's going to do? I simplify the model on purpose, and I did well. And the aggregate is just going to be equal to the number of risk occurrences, right? It's the number of the P times I, right? It's P times I. This is going to be the probability in this case, or in this case, the occurrence times the impact. And that's why for some of them, for example, here I have one that means that risk occur times 10,142 is going to be 10,142. In this case, I have two occurrences of this risk times 3,776. It's just the product of that. I simplify it. There's one function which is called the aggregate MC, which is here. And this lets you add and aggregate a Monte Carlo simulation using a Poisson and a log normal, for example. You can do that as well. And that will be the right way to do it. But I wanted to simplify it because this is an introductory way of doing this. And you can run this with the basic trial version of ModelRisk as well, right? So if you're interested, you can write down in the chat and I can send you this model as well, right? Now, what happens? Now that I have this, remember that I have the modeling, right? Every time that I have a risk occurrence, I have this. So what I did, I added a summation of all of that, right? That's going to be called total current risk. And how do you add a summation? You have what we call a Bose output here. So this Bose output, what it's going to do is going to generate a placeholder for all the summations. You see that every time that I press F9 with my keyboard, this is changing. So I need a placeholder, a bucket, where all these results are going to be added. For example, if I run 1,000 iterations, 1,000 of these are going to be added here. And when I finish, I should be able to see the histogram of this, right? That's the main idea. Now, how do you do it? You come here and you say output input, and you say mark output, and you say, I want this to be an output. And you set up the name, for example, total current risk. Now, one best practice, because you see that here I can run the model. Right now, this is ready to run, right? And you see how simple it is. If you ask me, maybe 30% of this is of the time that I took to make the model was to make it look good. But other than that, it's really simple. Now, what I did here in the aggregates, you see that I have the product of the two. This is the operation, right? The product of the two. I added as an input. You see here, you can add this as an input. And here you have, for example, it's called, I don't know, incomplete designs or whatever that you have there, right? Why is pre? Because I added the name pre, right? And you will see why. Because I wanted to have, you see the tornado charts that we're going to see in a minute, they will have these bars, right? Like this. Each bar should have a name. So the Bose input is mainly for me to internally tell ModelRisk that I have a bar, that I have a variable in the model that it's called, I don't know, incomplete design. So that's why I did it like that. Right? So this is the first portion of the model. So I'm going to run a simulation here. I set up a number of iterations. I'm just going to keep it quick with 1,000. So you see that it really flies. It finishes the simulation and it's going to show me this. So let me show it to you here, right? What I call the total current risk, right? Which was here. This is the total current risk, right? The one that was here. So what I have here, and let me show it to you. Normally you will start with a histogram like this, right? If you like, you can show the sliders or show what I call a marker. And it's here, for example, in my PAT. Otherwise, I will have the graphic like this. So this is going to be the total impact of my analysis like this, right? So this is going to be my total current risk. As you can see, these are my outputs. Remember that my outputs and inputs, well, you have an inventory of outputs and inputs there, right? So this is my output, the total current risk. And what I did at the beginning, you see, you can take a look at the histogram, you can change the chart to a cumulative ascending, right? And things that you can do, for example, with this slider, and you say, well, I want to see what's my PAT, right? What is the percentile 80 of my, in this case, of the impact of my risks? And this is, you see, it's 25 million. So this is 25 million. You have 80% probability for the impact to be less than 25 million and 20% probability of being more than 25 million, right? That's what you have. Of course, you have this other slider there. You can change it, right? Now, what else you can see, and let me show you to you here, you can show a tornado chart. And this tornado chart is going to be also in the total current risk, like this. So remember that I call it a pre, so let me show you here, right? So this is going to be all the risks that are contributing to this total. All the risks are here. So you see, the availability of qualified labor, which is here, this is the biggest risk. This is what we call a proportional contribution to spread tornado. And this is responsible of 61% of the total risk. The second one are the incomplete designs, which is here, and these are 25% of it. So between the two, you have already 86% of the risk. So if you do a Pareto analysis, you already have the two main risks where you should focus, right? So this is for starters, right? You start with the risk, and they will say, well, I have my two initial risks. I know my PAT, right? And now I need to know more things about this. So in a typical risk management process, what's going to happen is that you will have mitigation actions that are going to cost you money. You see, for example, for the incomplete designs, you hire an expert. This expert is going to cost you $500,000, right? But what's going to happen is that the probability that you have the risk occurring is going to lower, right? From 0.25 to 0.20. If I hire, for example, a legal expert, in this case, you see that the maximum of the event, which was 2.5 million, now it's going to be half of it, 1.2 million. Here, for example, for the legal expert, this is going to lower from 0.6 to 0.3, from 0.25 to 0.1, like this, right? So, of course, I am simplifying this because I'm showing you the quantitative portion of it. The main idea, and this is what we do when we do our consulting, is that we can help you with some workshops and some techniques to unveil and reveal what are going to be these probabilities, right? That's the main idea of it, that you will be able to quantify this and translate it into numbers and put it into a model like this. Now that you have that, you see that you have this current or inherent risk. Also, they are, some people call it pre-mitigation risks. You have the actions, and then you have your target risk. So basically, this is a replica of the first model, but with some change parameters like this. These parameters in yellow are normally reduced. Why is that? Because you apply some mitigation actions that are going to cost you money, right, to reduce them. For example, here you have 10, 12, and 15 million, right, that are then translated to 8, 10, and 13 million, right? Why is that? Because you hired an engineering expert, right, like this. Now that you have that, you see that when I run the simulation, I already had this in the output, and maybe you saw that, you see. I also have what I call a total target risk, which is this. And let me show you the two of them, right? I have a total target risk, which is the replica of the model, but with the reduced probabilities or impacts. And also I have what I call the target risk plus the actions, because of course you can have this and this is going to be better than that. That's totally obvious because you have a reduced probability or impact, but you have to take into consideration the real money that you're going to spend, because this is money that could happen, and this is money that could happen, but this one here, the 3 million, is money that will happen, right? So the main idea is that with this money that will happen, you will have to reduce heavily, hopefully, your PAT from the 25 million that we have to any number that we're going to see now. So that's why I have another output, which is here, which is called target risk and actions, right? So how does it look let's see, I go to the results there. You see that I have my current risk. If I see my target risk, that means that the S curve should be to the left, right? Why is that? Because my P8 is going to be reduced. So your target risk is going to be here, you see? This is your target risk. It was reduced, right? So your P80, as you see there, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a marker. So you can add a marker like the one that I had before in P80, like that. And maybe I will, like this, you see? It reduces from 25 million to 18 million, like this. So now you have 25 million to 80 million just reducing the probabilities and the impacts because of the actions that you took. Now, what is interesting is that I have to add the actions cost here. So if I add the actions, this should be more or less in the middle, right? In the middle of this area here. You should have another curve, which is this, right? You see? And you have it in the middle because you have to add the actions. You can show the legends. Now it's going to be very helpful because you have the total target risk. I'm sorry, the total current risk, which is this. If I do nothing, if I apply the actions, but the actions cost nothing, the curve is going to come to here. But as the actions have a cost, my cost should put me there, right? So what happens if this curve, right? Imagine that this target risk and actions curve will be there. Imagine that it's going to be there. It's going to have a very high P80, right? It's going to be more than the 25 million. Let's say that the P80 here after expensive actions is 27 million. Of course, I'm not going to apply those actions, right? I will have to optimize the actions that I apply. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. So that's the main idea, right? That you will have to do a cost-benefit analysis and measure the actions cost, in this case, 3 million, because this is, again, real money that you're going to spend, and it should heavily decrease your P80. In this case, my P80 at the beginning was 25 million. Then it was in the target risk. Let me see here. Your P80 at the beginning was 25 million. Then it was 18 if the actions cost 0, and then it was 21 million. So by investing 3 million, your P80 was reduced, right, from 25 mil to 21 mil, right? That's the idea. By investing 3, I'm getting 4. Is this okay or not, right? If you do the mathematically, you will say, yes, it's better than 3 because I'm and I'm getting 4. But remember, this is investing 3 millions that are real money to decrease the P80 that you have. I will go for it, definitely. But it's sometimes you have to have it very clear to explain it to people, mostly the people that are going to write the checks, right? So this is one example that you can see. Now, what happens with the tornado chart? Remember that the tornado chart at the beginning, we were looking at the current risk, and the current risk, availability of qualified labors and incomplete designs, right? These were the main risks. So we attacked those risks. And what you can say now, let's see the risk register for the target risk and actions, right? Which is here. So here you're going to have everything, right? And you see that now, as expected, now you have this post-qualified labor and the post-incomplete design here. So this is more or less the same. You see that now you have 82% before you have 86%. So these risks remain the main ones. What this is giving you focus, right? Where should I allocate my resources? Which are the main risks that I need to solve or to mitigate or to transfer to some other person, right, to manage them, right? Now, couple of additional graphical views that you will find interesting. First of all, well, about tornado charts, you have a rank correlation tornado. You see that now you have it in correlations. You have a conditional mean tornado, you see, which is double-sided, and it tells you how the mean of the total, in this case, the total impact of the risk register is going to change, right, depending on the scope of the risk. And the one that we were looking at, which I find the best one for business presentations, is this, right? Which is, this is going to sum up 100%, and then you will have this as 80%, for example, of the risk is explained by these two risks. Now, what else you can do? You can insert a box plot, for example, and then you can say, I want to see my current risk, then my target risk, then my target risk with actions, you see, like this. So you can see from above all the distributions, or if you like, you can take a look to the inputs if you like. I'm not sure if this is going to be great, but let's say here, for example, it was the incomplete designs. You can take a look to the pre and the post if you like, you see, like that. The land acquisition, the incomplete designs, etc. So you have complete flexibility in terms of what you're looking at, and you can combine both if you like this and that, for example. You can combine anything. So this is something that no other software can do because you have this flexibility there with the panes. Now, other things, if you need some auditing, or if you want to take a look to the model, so you can insert a data list, and this is going to give you the complete 1,000 samples, right, for each one of the risks. So you can take a look to what was the exact sample that you have in iteration 1, 2, 3, etc. for each one of the inputs and outputs. You see here, everything is selected. But if you like, you can only see the outputs, or you can only see a few outputs. For example, the current risk and the actions, like this. And then you can compare, you can graph, you can generate a lot of things. You can generate scatter plots like this, like the ones that I was showing you. For example, the total current risk versus the total target risk, and see if they are related or not. And then you can relate inputs with outputs as well. If you like to take this to a report, you can go here to home, copy that, and then you can put it in your, I don't know, PowerPoint or any spreadsheet, right? Or Word, anything. Right? You see, now, what else you can do before we go to the at-risk capabilities, at-risk migration capabilities, is that you can set up reports directly into the sheet. So instead of you having to go to the results every time and maybe copy the numbers, you have a set of functions here. You see the Bose sim mean or the Bose sim percentile that are going to let you report this directly into the sheet. So remember that these are the numbers that I was making reference to, but of course, this is much better. I have my 25 million, my 80 million, my 21 million. Those are the same numbers that you have there, but they are going to be updated after each simulation. You see, and basically I'm saying, give me percentile 80 of this distribution, right? Or give me percentile 90 of this distribution, like this, right? So this is great because you have that. Now, what else you can do? What else you can do? I'm going to go now to the possibilities if you're an at-risk user. If you're an at-risk user, you see that it's very easy to change things, right? In at-risk, you will have risk Bernoulli, you change it to Bose Bernoulli. If you have risk Poisson, you change it to Bose Poisson, right? Also, ModelRisk, they have a converter here. So if you like, you can convert a model from at-risk, the current model that you have, you can just press there and this is going to convert it. Or if you like, you can convert it in bulk, right? That means that if you have a directory where you have maybe 20 models which are built in at-risk, you can have an output directory where all these 20 models are going to go, and then you can convert. At the end, I will leave you a demo link where you can see that in detail, because that was like a really detailed webinar that we run where we went through all of this. What else you have? Very simple. You can have these tools here. I'm sorry, you have the settings, you can change the language. So you don't have an additional toolkit for Spanish or for any other language. So you have these languages which are going to be called directly. And the one that I really like the most is the customized ribbon, right? So what you can do, you can say, well, I like my ribbon, the one that I have here, but I can customize it. And I can say, for example, change it to the basic features, business forecasting, etc. And you have even an editor of the options. So that means that for some of your users, perhaps basic users, you don't need to show them all of this. Maybe they don't use time series or distribution fitting or correlations. So you can set up like this, you see, different. For example, if you're an engineer, you have one thing, but for finance, you have another. For epidemiology, you have different, etc. So depending on the use, you can set up your own risk. And if you like, for example, I can change this. If you're an at-risk user, I can change this and make it at-risk style, like this. So this is going to automatically change it, you see? And now my model risk is here, like this. You see that I didn't even have to run the model again, right? Or to close Excel. And I have my distribution, input, output, the correlations, etc., right? So this is great if you are an at-risk user that are trying to take a look to model risk. These are great tools that you have. Of course, the price point is always a no-brainer, but if you're hesitating in terms of functionality, you will see that it has much more there, right? Now, of course, as I said before, you have these data capabilities like the data viewer. You have the seeds library, which is basically to transform any distribution into a distribution library, and then you can reutilize it in any other. Now, let's go back to this model, right? So this is the first portion of it, and you see here that we have a complete analysis of it. Pre-mitigation, the mitigation actions, and the target and the residual, like this. Plus, we have a report, a detailed report there. So normally what's going to happen is that sometimes this is really good, right? But it has a lot of detail, right? You see that if I go to the tornado chart, I have all of this. And even if I can change this to the top 5, for example, right? I am talking about a lot of risks. Normally in your projects, you will have maybe 40, 50 risks. And the idea is for us to able to consolidate this risk. Why is that? Because sometimes people, they like to see the big picture. Not always we have to go to the nitty-gritty details. So what I did, I generated this phase label. This phase label is going to tell you these risks are, for example, design, contractual, environmental, and construction, right? And what I did here in this other report, right, I generated the sample. This is coming from the distributions. And this sample is basically a sum if that's going to sum every risk sample from the post-mitigated column, right? For example, the one that reads, I don't know, contractual, it's 1.5 million. Yes, because it's the 1.5 million that I have there. Construction is going to be 15 million. Why? Because it sums up all the 15 million that I have there, right? So it's basically a consolidation. It's a basic consolidation. So what you can do, you see here, every time that I press F9, this is going to be refreshed, right? Like this, right? And I have the summation there. So what I did, I generated this as an output as well. You see here, I added this as an output. And that's something that you can do in your model. You can set up any number of inputs and outputs, right? Why? Because I want to take a look to the distribution of this, right? So I already run the model, right? So I'm going to show you what it seems, right? And you see that now in the report page, you see that you have a report page and you have a risk register page, right? So in the report page here, I see my construction, contractor, design, etc. If I like, for example, I want to take a look as a histogram to the, for example, construction versus contractual. Take a look. Or I can see all of them, design and environmental, like this. Maybe it's better to take a look like this, you see? So you see all of the different components. Maybe construction is too big, so I can take a look to them like this, right? So the main idea is that you will be able to disaggregate and consolidate your models however you like with this, right? The main trick and the main tip here is knowing what you want to see. In this case, I want to see the curves of aggregated impacts, for example, for construction. So you will have from the risks, I want to see my histogram for construction only. Why? Because I am the construction manager. Maybe I am in design, so I am the design manager and say, well, what is this happening, right? Why I have this mold here, this little hump? How can we avoid it, right? And then you go back. That means that you can have a tornado chart only for the design ones, you see? So I will take a look here, only to the post. So the pre I'm going to eliminate, right? And you see here, you can eliminate the pre because I'm looking only at the pro. You see here at the post, you see here that, of course, the designs are going to be the biggest one, post incomplete designs. If you go to construction, you have different risks, you see? Now you have qualified labor, and you have a new one, construction issues. Why? Because they were labeled with construction. If you go to environmental, you see, now you have different one, permitting issues and environmental conditions. So this is great when you have people that want to see where they should focus. So you can basically drill down and drill up responsibilities. If you want to see the whole picture, you can take a look to this and say, well, qualified labor is the biggest one, and then incomplete designs and construction issues. But if you're the construction manager, these are your main risks, right? Only the construction, right? The design was here. So this is for somebody else. So you can drill down and up the different risks. Of course, you can take a look at this as a box plot, for example, there. You can see the magnitudes of each one of them, see, and say, well, which one's going to be my biggest one? Of course, construction, and maybe contractual, right? But design and environmental, maybe you guys are too small. Maybe we don't need to focus on you, right? So you have different views for different, in this case, for different results, right? Now, what else you can do? You can come back to the sheet, and you can do the same report as I did here. Remember, I did here, in this case, for the three phases, the mean, the P80 and P90. Here, I did the mean. Remember, both sim mean, both sim percentile, P80, P90, P99. So you can take a look and disaggregate the P80s for each one of them. Remember, you cannot sum P80s. The only statistic that you can sum is the mean. You cannot sum P80s, but you're going to have a very nice idea of it. Finally, and with this I finish, and I will open the floor for questions. What you can do, for example, I have this graphics sheet. If I like this histogram, let's say that I want to have the histogram for the current and the target risk and actions like this, I can go to this link chart and say, I want to stamp this graphic here. And I do it like that, you see? And every time that I run the simulation, this graphic is going to be updated. So that's great because you don't need to run it every time, right? So with this, I would like to finish this presentation. The presentation, you see, it's a simple introduction to ModelRisk. Couple of things that I would really like to stress out from ModelRisk that you will find very useful is that you have these examples. This is going to take you to a website. And this website has these very nice examples. You see here, they have this color coding. If they are medium, hard, etc. For example, if you go to this insurance policy, you go there, you can download the model free, and also you have an explanation, a complete explanation of the model, right? Take a look. So the main idea here is that you have a lot of resources to learn. In terms of videos, we have our YouTube channel, Fairfield Group, here. So let me send this link to you. And here you have both software. You see? So let me send you this playlist. We have 7, and with this, we're going to have 8 videos on this. So it's basically 8 hours, right, that you have there, or maybe, I don't know, 5 to 6 hours. Yeah, because not everyone is 1 hour, right? And here you have this one that I was talking about, moving from at-risk to ModelRisk, why switching from ModelRisk to ModelRisk. We have 4 models here, NPV calculation, cost estimation model, you see? So every month you're going to have one. Now I'm going to upload until, I would say, the day after tomorrow, this one, which is based for the risk register. Now, in terms of, if you like to have more specific knowledge of it, because you see that these are the more general videos, you will have also access to our video library. I'm going to send it to you here. And this video library, you have here this both software. Now you have more exclusive content for our users. So in this case, you have how to select the right distribution, moving from at-risk to ModelRisk, time series, Pelican, remember that I mentioned to you, Pelican, simulation tables, and correlations. So you have additional 6 models here, 6 webinars here that you can use. You will have to register if you go to that page, but that's going to make it very simple for you. You don't have to pay or anything like that. You can just see the videos embedded into your page and basically use it, right? So I'm not sure if you have any questions. And thank you all, because I see that nobody left. Thank you all for that. I'm not sure if you have any questions. No, in the chat? Well, if not, that's totally fine. I will upload, as I said, this video hopefully by Friday. We are going to be in LA. If you are in Los Angeles or close to it, we're going to be in Anaheim in a cost estimation conference next week. And thank you so much for your time and for your interest. Hopefully this is good for you and for the QRA practice. Our next event is tomorrow, as I said at the beginning of the chat. So if you like to register, it's going to be 4 hours full of people passionate about QRA, and then we will have our introduction to QRA during the 20th. Right, that's another training that we have. It's free, 1.5 hours. Thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you around. Take care.
Thanks, Gustavo.
Thank you, James and Dan, for staying. Take care, and thank you everyone for joining.